"If you fix this engine, I'll marry you," laughed the male CEO, his cold blue eyes flashing with contempt. He doubted the man's skills as he made this mocking quip. Little did he know, this sarcastic challenge would spark a journey that would change his life forever. The October rain fell in heavy sheets, as if the sky was determined to wash away the final traces of summer. The CEO's expensive car sputtered, slowing, and then died on Route 47. It came to a halt about 3 miles from Millbrook. The sound of rain pounding against the windshield filled the car. As the CEO's luxurious Mercedes sat on the side of the road, steam began rising from under the hood. She stared at the engine, eyes wide with alarm. "Perfect," she muttered bitterly, glancing at her watch. Stepping out of the car, she felt the cold rain soak her feet, her Chanel stilettos now, ruined by the puddles. Her tailored suit was drenched in an instant. In the distance, she spotted a small faded sign swaying in the wind. It read, "Jackson Auto Repair. Fair prices, honest work." Reluctantly, she hurried into the small garage, her heels clicking against the cold concrete. The garage, with its shabby exterior, was not what she expected. Inside, the smell of motor oil mixed with stale coffee filled the air. Flickering fluorescent lights cast a dim glow over the cramped space. "Is anyone here?" she called out impatiently. A man emerged slowly from under a faded blue pickup, wiping grease from his coveralls. When he stood, his eyes were kind, yet weary. This was Michael Jackson, a 60-year-old black man with a sturdy build, his face weathered but gentle. His short, curly hair revealed a broad forehead and deep-set eyes. His worn features showed a life full of hard work and determination. "Having trouble, ma'am?" Michael asked warmly, his voice calm and measured. The CEO crossed her arms, shivering, from the cold and irritated by the situation. "It just died on me," she snapped, her voice tinged with panic. "I have an important meeting in Chicago at 8 a.m. tomorrow. This can't be happening." Michael nodded understandingly, his expression unchanged. He grabbed his toolbox and stepped into the rain. In moments, he popped the hood and began examining the engine with swift precision. His shirt darkened as rainwater soaked through, but he continued to work. The CEO hovered nearby, her anxiety mounting as she scrolled through her phone messages. She watched Michael work, her heart pounding with frustration and impatience. After a few minutes, he closed the hood gently and turned to her. "The cooling system is shot, the radiator's cracked, and the water pump is ruined. I'm afraid this is not a quick fix," Michael said gravely. Her brow furrowed. "How long will it take?" Michael paused, as if calculating the time required. "About 2 to 3 days. I'll need to order parts from out of town." Frustration bubbled inside her. "Name your price," she demanded. "I'll pay double or triple for expedited shipping." Michael looked up at her with a calm yet firm expression. "Ma'am, money won't make the parts arrive any faster. Some things can't be solved with money. They take time." Her frustration boiled over. "Everything in this world can be bought with money, Jackson," she snapped. Michael gave a sad smile and shook his head. "Not everything, Miss Wellington. Some things are more valuable than money." The CEO was stunned by his words. She was used to living in a world where money and power could fix anything, but for the first time, she realized she had no control over this situation. The mechanic's calm resolve left her speechless. Suddenly, a child's voice rang out from the back of the garage. "Daddy, is someone out there?" They turned to see a little boy, about 5 years old, in bright blue pajamas. He clutched a worn teddy bear and waddled toward Michael, his eyes wide with wonder. Michael knelt beside him, smiling. "Jacob, come inside, sweetie. It's too cold out here," Michael said gently. Jacob shook his head and looked at the CEO. "My dad's the best mechanic in the world," he said proudly. "He can fix anything." Despite her frustration, the CEO couldn't help but smile at the child's innocent confidence. Michael patted his son's head before turning to the CEO. "There's a small inn not far from here," he said. "I think you should wait there. For now." She stood motionless in the rain, watching Michael and Jacob head back into the garage. She felt a strange feeling rising inside her. For the first time, she felt small and helpless in the face of genuine kindness and simplicity. Part 2 will continue with Sarah's internal conflict, her reflection on her life's choices, and the pivotal decision she makes after the confrontation with Michael. As Sarah stood there, soaked to the bone in the relentless rain, she realized something had shifted inside her. For the first time, she felt powerless. It wasn't just the car breaking down, or the fact that she was stranded in a small town. It was the way Michael had spoken to her. His calm demeanor and gentle refusal had pierced through the walls of her pride and control. She was used to getting what she wanted, and in her world, money could make things happen. But here, in this small town, she was faced with something she couldn't control: time. And for the first time in her life, that thought scared her. The small garage had become a symbol of everything Sarah had spent her life avoiding: humility, simplicity, and a slower pace. She had always lived in a world of rush and pressure, where success was measured by speed and results. But Michael's words had shaken her, reminding her that some things couldn't be hurried, no matter how much money you had. As she made her way to the small inn Michael had mentioned, she couldn't help but feel the weight of her decisions. She had always prided herself on being a force to be reckoned with, a woman who could handle anything. But in that moment, she felt small, the kind of smallness she had never experienced in her towering skyscrapers or high-powered meetings. It wasn't just the rain or the cold that made her feel this way. It was the realization that for once, she couldn't buy her way out of a situation. She spent the night in a modest inn, the kind of place she would have normally dismissed, without a second thought. The warm bed felt different from the luxury she was used to. It was comforting in a way she couldn't quite understand. The rain continued to pour through the night, but it didn't bother her. It was like a cleansing, a reset of sorts. The next morning, after a restless night of tossing and turning, Sarah knew she had to confront her own arrogance. As much as she hated to admit it, Michael had done something she hadn't expected. He had made her realize how hollow her life had become. The endless cycle of meetings, the chase for more power, and the lonely nights in her high-rise office. None of it had truly fulfilled her. She knew she had a long road ahead of her, both personally and professionally. But something had changed in her. The small, humble town of Millbrook had given her a lesson she wasn't ready to learn, but needed. It had shown her that some of the most valuable things in life couldn't be bought: kindness, family, and the simple moments that made life worth living. After breakfast, Sarah drove back to Jackson Auto Repair. The rain had stopped and the sky had cleared, but a strange weight still hung in the air. She pulled up in front of the small garage, and Michael was already there working on a car. She stepped out of the car, her heels clicking against the wet pavement. Michael looked up as she approached, his face still calm and focused, as though nothing had changed. He wiped his hands on a rag and gave her a nod of acknowledgement. "I've thought a lot about what you said, Michael," Sarah began, her voice steady but softer than usual. "And I've realized that I've been chasing the wrong things. I've spent my entire life focused on power, money, and control, but that's not what really matters." Michael didn't say anything. He simply looked at her, waiting for her to continue. "I wanted to apologize for being so arrogant," she said, her tone sincere. "I've been so caught up in my own world that I never stopped to think about what really matters. People like you, your family, the way you live, that's what matters. Not the wealth, not the power. You've taught me that." Michael smiled, faintly, but didn't speak. He didn't need to. His presence spoke volumes. "I'd like you to fix my car," she continued. But not because of my money or my status. I want to learn from you, Michael. I want to understand what it's like to do something for the right reasons without expecting anything in return. Can you teach me that? Michael paused for a moment, his deep eyes studying her. Then he nodded slowly, as though making a decision. I can teach you, but it won't be easy, he said softly. It's about patience, and sometimes learning. The hard way. Sarah smiled, finally feeling like she was ready to learn. The following days in Millbrook were a blur for Sarah. Each morning, she visited Jackson Auto Repair, watching Michael work with a focus and precision that spoke volumes about his character. He wasn't just fixing cars. He was fixing something, deeper in her, though she didn't fully realize it yet. Sarah had come to learn that she was no longer chasing success for the sake of accolades. The town's simplicity was grounding her, and Michael's quiet strength had shown her the power of integrity, patience, and humility. But she wasn't ready to let go of her life in Chicago, not yet. She still had the company, her employees, and the weight of being a CEO hanging over her. It wasn't easy to balance the old world she knew with the new life she was starting to build in Millbrook. One afternoon, as Sarah sat in the quiet garage, watching Michael work, he finally broke the silence. "You've been talking about making changes in your life, Sarah," he said, wiping his hands on a rag. "But it's not just about what you want. It's about what you're willing to leave behind." Sarah looked up at him, her gaze meeting his steady one. She had been thinking about it a lot lately. "I thought I had it all figured out. But the more I'm here, the more I realize I've been chasing the wrong things. Money, status. That's all I've been focused on. But the real things that matter, the things you have here in Millbrook, are the things I've been missing my entire life." Michael gave a small smile, nodding as he worked. "Sometimes it takes getting lost to find out where you really belong." Sarah had thought she had everything in control, that her success would define her, but she was starting to understand that success without personal fulfillment was just an empty title. The people here in Millbrook, the simple life they led, was something she couldn't ignore anymore. But her life in Chicago still loomed over her, the meetings, the shareholders, and the company that had made her who she was. "Michael, I have a business to run. I can't just walk away," she said, her voice tinged with frustration. "I built it from the ground up, but it's not just about the numbers. It's about the people, right? And I'm beginning to see that. But leaving everything behind? I don't know if I can do that." Michael paused for a moment, then spoke softly. "Sarah, you can't run away from who you are, but you also can't keep ignoring what you feel. You're stuck because you're trying to hold on to two worlds. It's okay to choose a new path, one that aligns with what you believe in." Sarah didn't respond immediately. She needed time to process his words, time to think about her future. Over the next few days, she found herself returning to the same spot in the garage, watching Michael work, learning from him, and starting to understand the quiet wisdom in his every movement. It wasn't just about fixing cars. It was about caring for things, for people, in a way that she had never understood before. One evening, Michael asked if she would join him for dinner at the diner. Sarah hesitated but agreed, feeling more at ease in his presence than she had in years. As they walked into Maggie's diner, she was struck by the warmth of the place, the simple smiles, and the genuine hospitality. It was so different from the cold, polished world she came from. Michael's arm was around Emma, who looked up at Sarah with bright, curious eyes. The warmth and affection in their family was something Sarah hadn't realized she craved until that moment. Sitting down, at the table, Sarah listened to the laughter and chatter around her. She felt as if the world she had once known, the one driven by success and power, was now a distant memory. She was surrounded by genuine kindness, something she had forgotten existed. "Sarah, you've changed so much," Maggie said, placing a steaming cup of coffee in front of her. You're not the same person who came here a few weeks ago. Sarah smiled softly, taking a deep breath. I know. I've learned a lot. More than I ever thought I would. Michael smiled, watching her with a knowing gaze. Sometimes it's the small things that teach us the biggest lessons. Sarah was beginning to see what he meant. In her pursuit of wealth and success, she had overlooked the things that truly mattered. The love of family, the warmth of community, the joy in simple moments. She wasn't sure what her future held, but she knew one thing for certain. She no longer wanted to be defined by the cold, calculating world of high-stakes business. Over the next few days, Sarah's thoughts became clearer. She couldn't abandon everything she had built, but she could redefine it. She could make Wellington Foods into something more, something that not only focused on profits, but also on community, kindness, and integrity. The thought of balancing her business with a life rooted in human values felt right. She wasn't just a CEO. She was a person who wanted to make a difference. One evening, after a long day of reflecting on her decision, she stood before Michael and Emma in the quiet garage. I've made up my mind, she said. I'm going to change how I run my company. I won't abandon everything, but I'll make sure it's about more than just numbers. I'll use my position to make a real difference. Michael nodded, his eyes filled with pride. You're already making a difference, Sarah, and I believe in you. As Sarah drove back to Chicago, the familiar skyline loomed in the distance, but this time, it felt different. The rush of the city, the endless meetings, and the cold corporate world no longer held the same appeal. Her time in Millbrook, the mall, lessons she had learned, and the warmth of Michael and Emma had changed her in ways she hadn't expected. Sarah had spent years chasing the next big deal, the next promotion, and the next victory. But now she understood that true fulfillment didn't come from wealth or status. It came from genuine connections, from leading with heart and values, and from taking time to make a meaningful impact on the lives of others. The world she had been a part of before now seemed shallow, and she knew it was time to change her path. Back at Wellington Foods headquarters, the atmosphere was tense. The boardroom was filled with skeptical faces, each one watching Sarah with an almost predatory gaze. Richard Harris, as expected, was seated at the head of the table. He had been waiting for her return, ready to pounce on her absence. Sarah, welcome back, Richard said coolly, his eyes scanning her as if searching for any weakness. I hope you have a satisfactory explanation for your little holiday. Sarah took a deep breath, her resolve firming as she stepped into the room. Her time in Millbrook had prepared her for this moment. She was no longer the same woman who had walked out of these doors days ago. She had a new sense of clarity, and she wasn't going to back down. My car broke down during a business trip, and I was stranded in a small town, Sarah began, her voice steady. But I did my best to manage things remotely. Richard scoffed, clearly unimpressed. Reasonable, I suppose, but your absence cost the company. The stock has dropped over 5% in 2 days. Shareholders and clients are beginning to question your leadership. I think we both know how serious this is. Sarah could feel the weight of his words. The pressure was mounting, but she had a different perspective now. I understand the concern, Richard, but I've come to realize that leadership isn't just about making decisions in boardrooms or focusing solely on profit. It's about integrity, responsibility, and doing what's right for the people we serve. Richard's face twisted with disbelief. You're talking about values and integrity? What about the shareholders? What about the company's future? Sarah leaned forward, her voice calm but unwavering. Our future isn't just about profits. It's about building something that lasts, a company that values people over profit, one that leads with compassion and responsibility, not just financial growth. The room grew silent as Sarah's words echoed through the boardroom. For the First time, she was speaking from a place of genuine belief, not from the cold, calculating mindset that had once defined her. The board members exchanged uneasy glances, and Richard's smirk faltered. "You're talking about idealistic nonsense, Sarah," Richard retorted, his voice dripping with disdain. "The market doesn't care about your fairy tales, it cares about results." Sarah stood up, her posture straight and confident. "I'm not talking about fairy tales. I'm talking about real change. Change that can lead to long-term success. A business that treats people, both its employees and customers, with respect. We have the chance to do something meaningful here, and I'm willing to fight for that." Her words left the room in stunned silence. For a moment, the tension was palpable. Then, to Sarah's surprise, one of the board members, David Hamilton, spoke up. "I agree with Sarah," he said quietly. "This company has been about profits for too long. Maybe it's time we took a step back and considered a more balanced approach." The others seemed to hesitate, but one by one they began nodding. Richard's face turned red with frustration, and he leaned forward. "You can't be serious, David. This isn't about idealism, it's about survival." Sarah turned to Richard, her eyes filled with resolve. "I believe in this vision, Richard. And if you think it's unrealistic, then maybe you're right. Maybe I'm not the right CEO for this company anymore." The room fell silent again, the weight of Sarah's words hanging heavy in the air. Richard's face contorted with rage, but he knew better than to challenge her further. The board members looked between Sarah and Richard, their expressions unreadable. "I'll respect whatever decision the board makes," Sarah continued. "But I want you to know that I'm committed to building a company that focuses on more than just the bottom line. It's time to make a choice, to follow the same old path or to embrace a new one." Richard opened his mouth to respond, but was cut off by the sound of the door opening. Michael Jackson, the mechanic from Millbrook, stepped into the room, his presence as calm as always. Sarah turned to him, surprised to see him here. "Michael, what are you doing here?" He smiled warmly, his eyes steady. "I thought I might be of help, Miss Wellington. Sometimes the best decisions come from those who see things differently." With that, he walked over to Sarah's side, his presence a silent testament to the values she now believed in. The board members exchanged looks, some of them uncertain, others nodding in quiet approval. Sarah's heart swelled with gratitude. Michael's quiet support was everything she needed to solidify her decision. As the meeting dragged on, it became clear that the board was torn. Richard's attempts to undermine Sarah's position were met with resistance, and by the end of the meeting, the room was filled with an uneasy calm. "I'll be leaving Wellington Foods," Sarah declared, her voice ringing with finality. "But I'm not leaving the business. I'll be purchasing the Midwest division and transforming it into a company that values its people above profits. A company that stands for kindness, integrity, and sustainability."